Welcome to the Veterinary Rehabilitation Podcast, where we aim to help fellow veterinary rehab therapists increase their knowledge and elevate their practice. I'm Megan Kelly.
And I'm Anae Lloyd. Together, we bring you the latest insights, research, and information in the field of veterinary rehabilitation.
This podcast is brought to you by Onlinepethealth, a leading continuing education membership for veterinary rehabilitation therapists. With Onlinepethealth, you'll have access to a wide range of online resources to help you stay up to date with the latest techniques, advances, and trends in the industry.
Our podcast features in-depth conversations with leading experts in veterinary rehabilitation. They share their own experiences and knowledge to help you improve your practice. Whether you're a seasoned pro or just starting out in the field, our goal is to provide you with the tools and the insights you need to succeed.
So join us as we explore the exciting world of veterinary rehabilitation and help you take your practice to the next level.
Welcome to this week's Veterinary Rehabilitation Podcast. It is so great to have you guys joining us today. Today we are revisiting a prelim with Tuulia Luomala, which is absolutely one of my favorites so far. Tuulia talks to us about pandiculations. Now, when I started off the interview, I actually thought that I might have to have a few backup topics in my pocket that we could speak about because we weren't going to be able to talk long enough about what these reflexive yawnings and stretchings that we do on a kind of daily cyclical basis. But I was wrong. Tuulia surprised me with how much information there was to know, or how much there is to know about pandiculations, how much we already know and still don't know about this really interesting phenomenon that happens within our bodies. So join us. I would love to challenge you to share whatever you learn today. If you take a screenshot of yourself listening to the podcast, pop that on social media, tag us in at Onlinepethealth. It would be great if you use the hashtags myfascial chains and Vet Rehab Summit 2023, but most importantly, share something that you've learned from this podcast. Share some nugget of information with your audience, with your clients, with the people who are following you and learning from you. That's really our goal, so please go ahead and do that as much as possible. If you haven't joined us yet in the Vet Rehab Summit group for the prelims, please do that. It's so amazing chatting to all the experts in the field and getting to know our sponsors as well in a much more personal way. So before we head into our interview, I want to say a big thank you to our sponsor for this podcast, Respond Systems. Choosing the right therapy laser and PEMF system for your practice are big decisions, and that's why Respond Systems has been helping to make that decision easier for over 40 years. By offering both Class 3B and 4 lasers, as well as a full line of PEMF products designed for both small animals and horses. As part of the Paul Prosper family of brands, Respond Systems is dedicated to providing you with a customer and patient-centric approach to rehabilitation. Find out more at respondsystems.com. Over to our interview.
Hello, everyone, and welcome. So, Tuulia, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us. All right, so let me introduce myself and Onlinepethealth to give you guys an idea of who we are and what we do. We have so many new members that have joined the group. It's incredibly exciting because it just shows that the subject of fascia is really, really something that everyone is interested in and wanting to learn more about. I am Anae Lloyd from Onlinepethealth. I'm a veterinary physiotherapist in South Africa. And as Onlinepethealth, we provide continuing education to rehabilitation therapists all around the world. It is our absolute passion to provide continuing education that's going to help you be the best veterinary rehabilitation therapist that you can be. And that comes in the shape and form of webinars, podcasts, research summaries, blogs, Facebook interviews like this one. The list is really long, and there's something that can fit in with everyone's budgets and everyone's time commitment, so that doesn't matter where you are and what you do as a rehab therapist, you're going to be able to learn and benefit and grow with us. All right, so the Vet Rehab Summit is our annual conference, if you're not familiar with it yet. And this year, our theme is myofascial kinetic chains. We have two lecturers, Vipka Albront and Rika Schultz, and they did the original research in identifying the myofascial lines in horses, which has been fantastic. And we're hoping that the canine research will be published very soon. They've also written a book on the equine myofascial kinetic lines. And again, there will be a book on the canine one soon, which I'm really excited about. And Tuulia is also, or has written a book that will be published soon. She'll tell us about that. All right, so let's get started. Tuulia, please will you introduce yourself and your journey into understanding fascia?
Thank you and hello. So I'm a physiotherapist. And I have been treating humans and animals 23 years now, from babies to elderly people, and also from puppies to older dogs, and from foals to older horses. So everything between that one. So as a physio, animal physio, I do a lot of things. I do mobilization, kinesiotaping, acupuncture from the traditional Chinese medicine, but my focus is on the fascial treatments. And I have been studying more closely fascia last 13 years. And last, let's say 5 years, we have been working this kind of fascial atlas of equine and canine body. It will be huge. It will be phenomenal. And finally, I hope it will be out, let's hope, this end of this year or early next year. We were writing it for years, and now we have been, the material is in the publisher's place and desk, and we have been waiting 1 year already how they are doing it. So it has been really stressful times to wait that book come out, but I will hope you will all enjoy it when it comes out. And we are, with my husband, Mika, we are teaching animal fascial manipulation all over the world and writing books about the fascia and some related topics. And fascial manipulation as a method is very, very nice. And I love to teach it and I love to use it. So all of these customers I'm seeing daily are having fascial treatments in some form, let's say it that way.
So that's amazing. Fascia has really been your life's work and your focus for many years now. I love that. And I want to say congratulations, Tuulia, because it isn't in everyone's wheelhouse to write a textbook. I'm an absolute textbook nerd. I just want them all. So I cannot wait for this one.
Yeah, me too. I have so much books that my shelves are like, but it's so nice to
bowing under the weight, right?
Yes, that's the problem.
And on that note, Tuulia has presented quite a few webinars for Online Pet Health before. So she presented a full series of webinars on the fascia, which is in the Online Pet Health Equine membership. I really highly recommend that if you're getting excited for the summit and you're getting ready, you go watch those webinars, because it will give you some foundation on which the summit will build. So Tuulia, will you tell us a little bit about that series of webinars and what people will learn if they go watch them?
Yeah, I totally agree. I recommend them for everybody for sure. And as a first webinar, we did what is fascia. So that is providing the basic knowledge of fascia and how it is built and what kind of structures there are, loose connective tissue, dense connective tissue. We are coming from the cell level to the more macro level, so you can see the whole perspective, how the fascia is built. So that is really the basics that you should be aware of. So that's nice. And then in the second one, we did fascial phenomena, which is including this kind of functional perspective, force transmission, fascial recoil, hysteresis, and all of these things which are related to the fascia in functional ways. So that's also something to think if you are doing exercises or giving rehabilitation programs for the animals. That would be some good basic knowledge for that one. And then the third one, we were doing myofascial slings, and we were looking closely the head and neck, and then we were looking the legs and a little bit from the trunk, how the connections are built, how the muscles and the fascia is connected, and how we can have these kind of detailed connections in the body, which are then also very important when we are thinking the treatment and when we are looking the exercise. So all of those are coming from that webinar. And the last one will be also more functional, because we are talking about the building the strong body. And then we are looking again, fascial recoil, these kind of principles, what we need when we are training the fascial body. Of course, we are training everything together, myo part and the nervous system and everything else, but still we can think what principles are important if we think the fascial perspective. And those perspectives and principles are presented in that webinar.
This was definitely one of my favorite webinar series that we've ever hosted. And there was so much that I took out of it. One of the things that I find very interesting about fascia is it has its whole, like a whole different language. So if we're talking about fascial slings, how are they different from or related to the myofascial kinetic lines that we're focusing on at the summit?
Yeah, good question. And now it's good to remember that there are different methods. Now, the end result is the same, but we can come from different angles to this intriguing topic of fascia. But if we think kinetic lines, it is based on Thomas Meyer's work on human side, so anatomy trains. And in anatomy trains, they are building the system based on the muscle connection, which are then also wrapped with the fascia and everything. It's really like myofascial chains. So that's really, the name is giving a good feeling what is coming out of that one. But as I am an animal fascial manipulation teacher and more focused on the fascial manipulation, there we are more focusing of the fascial body itself. So we are dividing the body in three-dimensional way into the segments, or we can think cylinders. And in that kind of way, we can enter the body with this kind of points, which are really closely connected to the trigger points and also with the acupuncture points. So when knowing previously from my studies already the trigger points and acupuncture points, and now having the fascial manipulation method as very fast and very strong tool in my toolbox, I'm really combining all of those ones and then find, well, I could use an example of this kind of, to remember you have been drawing this kind of pictures when you were a child, where you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and you are connecting the dots, and then you can have like nice elephant or something like that. So the dots are connected in different way and you can have a different outcome. So the method in a nutshell would be that one. So you are having the dots and you are connecting the dots and you are doing your treatments and you are having nice outcomes like nice flowers and nice moving horse. And yeah, so that's it. So we are going more three-dimensional way and thinking in that way, but still the end result is more or less the same. So relaxing the body, helping it move more free, having the happy athlete, having the horse or the dog get rid of the pain or get rid of the stiffness, or so just helping the animal would be the focus anyway, but getting a little bit different angle to the perspective.
I really love that analogy with the connect the dots drawing. That's really awesome.
Yeah, because it's really the thing I do every day. So I'm connecting the dots and drawing the picture and looking what's there.
I love that. You've also been part of a previous Vet Rehab Summit, right? The Vet Rehab Summit 2020. And there you spoke about animal fascial manipulation as a treatment tool. So that webinar is also in our library and you guys can go watch that across all the memberships. But that's really, that's a really good one. There are a lot of things from your series of webinars that have stuck with me since I've watched them. And one of those is Pandiculations, because of course I'd never heard that word before you said it. So what are Pandiculations?
All right. So pandiculation is this kind of involuntary stretching of the soft tissue. And I find it very interesting that reptiles, mammals, fish, birds are doing it. So I crazy. So it's really like associated with this kind of biological behavior. And it's also associated with especially the sleep-wake rhythm. So if you think the dog is waking up, so it will yawn and it will stretch and then it will go. So maybe in our daily life, cats and dogs are the ones we really often see doing pandiculation. So it's this kind of model action pattern. So it's this kind of reflexive behavior which is happening more or less in the same pattern, no matter where the animal is or what is the situation. So when you watch the cats or the dogs doing it, you are like, okay, it's happening really the same pattern. Also horses do it, but it is not so typical to horse do this kind of big stretching and like, oh, I get my body into the order. But if we think this kind of pattern of movement, I would highly recommend that we should be doing that also. So yawning and stretching our body, so opening and closing and then trying to move the body so we can really get the movement into the myofascial body of ourselves. And also I find there are not so many studies about this topic, but I tried to go through all of them because I found the thing also really, really, really interesting. So there's a lot of things we can talk about this topic because it's associated, like pandiculation and yawning, they go together. And do you know in which age we start to yawn? Have you?
No, when did you start to yawn?
Yes, and I find it, and it was so interesting because it's 12-week-old fetus. So we start to yawn in a womb. How interesting is that? So it's important stimulus for the lungs. That was the one thing that the researchers was looking, that yawning seems to be this kind of powerful muscular stretch, and it's recruiting the also, I find very interesting because it's also activating hypothalamus.
Okay.
Which is really interesting because we get this kind of connection from this yawning to the brains. And in this way, we can also think that it's part of our interoception and this kind of self-awareness. I think quite often we think that, okay, we are yawning when we are bored or when we get tired or these kind of things. Yes, it can be also that, but there's also a lot of things, or we get hypoxia, so we need to get more air. But if we think we are starting it as 12-week-old fetus, maybe there is more functions also. So I think really that it's important for the lungs, important for the brain health. And in some studies, it was also said that when we are yawning, we are cooling our brain. So it's also opening and stretching all the fascial connections. So the connective tissue is also stretched when we are yawning and doing this kind of pandiculation movements. So it's really important for the mouth, head, ears, upper neck, throat, let's say the upper part of our body. So that will be the thing. And then if we think animals again, and this I see a lot of in horses, this kind of emotional yawning. So they get when they try to relax themselves or they are in the stressful situation, you can see this kind of like yawning like it's not only this kind of one like stress relief yawning, but it's this kind of like, okay, I try to relax myself. So you can see that one in dogs and horses. And also one really interesting thing I found was this kind of contagious yawning. So if I yawn, you will yawn in a while. So that's going with the mirror cell system. And I really find interesting point also from the studies that autistic persons and schizophrenic persons doesn't yawn so much. So when you have problems in your nervous system and in your brain level, so hypothalamus will be really in key this one. So if you don't get so much the social engagement, then you tend to do yawning less. And that's like, oh, it's really interesting point. So I have been really digging the vagus nerve and the sympathetic and autonomic nervous system lately. So last year I have been really digging that stuff. So this one is also very interestingly going to that same box, like, okay, we have this kind of system. So with yawning and with pandiculations, we could also reassure our body and get more self-aware.
Whoa.
Well, yeah, I think you didn't expect this to come. So you were like, okay, pandiculations is nice, but yeah, it is.
I was sort of, before I asked the question, I was like, oh, I'm going to have to figure out some other stuff we could talk about. No. Wow. Okay.
Yeah. Somebody is asking that are these related to the developmental reflexes?
Yeah.
Good question. And has to say I don't know, because there is not so much information or research of this topic out there. And very good point, because the brain, let's say it might be really that it's because it is thought to be this kind of modal action pattern. So in a way, reflex type of pattern or behavior what we have. So in a way, it might be that there are some relation to the reflexes, also it might be, because in humans we see a lot of these kind of reflex patterns which are not integrated in the time they should, but they are staying there in the body, and then we are getting rid of them when the people are coming here to have their treatment, and they still have this kind of primitive reflexes which should be integrated, but they are not. And in human field, we can also quite often see that the very traumatic events or this kind of very hard viral infections can this kind of mimic our primitive reflexes. So in a way, we get again our primitive reflexes back in our body if we can have this kind of thing. So really, like in the human side, we can find this one a lot. I agree totally on this one. Like some user is commenting like research on the human side. So I agree on the human side, yes. But from the animal side,
not so much.
Don't know. Yeah.
Not so much. All right. So that's very interesting. So if I think now, you've directed my mind to yawning, and you've mentioned the brain and the mirror cells, which I think is very interesting, and the nervous system connection, and that behavioral response where it's like a calming signal or a stress relief thing. So as therapists, we're familiar with that, like a big release can often come with lots of yawning, but it can also be a stress signal, right? And if I try and think like back to the myofascial chains that I've been studying up in preparation for the summit, there's that physical connection of the masseter muscle and the hyoid, and so essentially everything around your jaw is connecting the superficial dorsal line, the superficial ventral line, the deep dorsal and the deep ventral line. They're all connecting here, and the spiral line is also connecting around the jaw. So those myofascial chains all have a connection in the jaw, and maybe that's that yawning trigger followed by the stretching through the body. Maybe there's a relationship there. I think that's very interesting.
I find it also. And stomatognatic system is really like the jaw and the head is really interesting. Also in fascial manipulation, we have like plenty of points around the upper neck and the like the head, the masseter. So and also if I think from the human side, because I do that one also a lot, we have so many problems on the upper neck and the head and the masseter and the jaw. So I find the topic is super interesting.
Very interesting. I have a question for our listeners. If you're sitting here and you are yawning and stretching, please put your hand up, because I'm literally like keeping myself in a box. Don't stretch. You're live. Everyone's watching you.
Yeah, and yes, and that's the thing in mirror cells, because and also when I'm talking about the yawning, some of them might feel like, okay, I need to yawn, because it's like this kind of and then like, okay, maybe I do a little bit stretching like this. So it's really, if somebody is doing that, then you are following the pattern, and that's interesting. And in mirror cells, I think they have been testing the monkeys with those ones, and really finding that the mirror cells are activating, although the monkey is looking somebody to doing some tasks. So the same areas from the brain are activated when they are looking somebody. So I find the mirror cells also so interesting. So they are really big thing also in our body, and how we feel during the day, because what kind of company we have. Are we in the stress situation, or are we in the situation that we can yawn and stretch ourselves, or are we always like, oh, my body is so tensed?
Yeah, I think I have a lot of mirror cells. Thanks for all the hands up, guys. I'm glad I'm not alone. And it makes me think of, like you said, the company that you keep. But I do feel like these pandiculations are something that we almost train out of our bodies in a very sedentary lifestyle, because I don't know. Have you guys experienced this? So many mirror cells. It's so cool, guys. Well done. Has anyone else experienced this? But kind of the less active you are, the less you're moving, the less you're using your body, the less you're doing things like waking up and stretching in the morning, but the more your body wants to. So you kind of have that feeling, oh, I need a stretch, but then it's painful or uncomfortable, and then you're like, no, I shouldn't do that. So we're kind of training it out of ourselves. And when we're in company where we have to be very composed and in our box, then again, we're training that out of ourselves, right? We're not allowing ourselves to move when we get that trigger that says you need to move your spine or your shoulders or whatever, they're getting stiff, because we're keeping ourselves in our little box and being composed and well-behaved human beings. So is that right, or is that just kind of my perception, like that we train it out?
I think that's very good thinking. And as I said, I have been looking the nervous system last year quite deeply. And really the self-awareness and interoception, those two things are super important. And now from the human field, we can find a lot of things from that one, and maybe think what we can integrate for the animal field. And I think quite often with this kind of sedentary lifestyle in horses and dogs also, they tend to lose the body awareness and how should I feel and how should I feel good. So I think those all of those things are like very, very, very interesting. I find for example, one study where they were studying horses, if they use this kind of gentle scratching or this kind of more strong rubbing. So the using the brush really gentle way, or really like this kind of hard way. So there they can see also a lot of difference how the behavior of the horse is. And it seems that oxytocin levels are different with those horses which tend to get this kind of gentle rubbing, and the basal stage of the oxytocin is in fact lower on those horses which tends to have this kind of gentle rubbing. So it's like but when I was reading it, I was thinking like, yeah, maybe it's the way that when you are more relaxed, like overall, and then you get stretching, you are like, oh, I feel my body better and I feel good, and this. So interesting things when you look this kind of.
Yeah. I think you should send that paper to me, please. I'd love to read that.
Yeah.
So we have a comment here. Seeing, hearing, and even thinking about yawning can automatically trigger yawns in response, yet some people find yawning more infectious than others. A new study on a large and diverse sample of participants found that people who score high on psychopathic personality traits are less likely to yawn contagiously. And that's what you were saying.
Yeah, that was what I was saying.
Yeah, earlier. It's very interesting. Very, very interesting. So is there a way for us to evaluate pandiculations? Is this just like something interesting that we can add to our knowledge base, but what is the clinical relevance for us as rehab therapists?
I think that's a good question to ask from the owner. That do you see your animal stretching? Mm-hmm. And of course, in horses, it's a little bit difficult again, because quite often people are not seeing them like so much. In dogs, you can really ask it from the owner, and they are quite often very good at saying that, okay, now when you ask, I have been noticing that it doesn't stretch so much that it was doing it before. So in dogs, I think it's easy to analyze this one, but in horses not so easy, because the horses doesn't stretch anyway so much, and maybe the owner is spending so little time from the day with their horse that it's not so easy to evaluate that one.
So from a clinical perspective, is it accurate, or is this just what we're thinking, that kind of the more dysfunctional or stiff or tight your body gets, the less you will pandiculate? Or would it be more because you're trying to self-heal?
I would go with the first option from my clinical perspective, that more problems, more dysfunctions you have, more or less you get this kind of and I think a good way of saying also that the pandiculation can be this kind of neuromyofascial hygiene. So you are taking care of your system when you are doing it. And if you get pain signals or dysfunctions into your body, you don't tend to do that so much. So I would go with that option from my perspective, that you tend to lose the ability to stretch. And I think that goes very nicely with humans also, because when we are young, we tend to hop and dance and go down, and we tend to be like dee, 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 dee. And when we get older, we tend to be like because you very rarely see, if you think like people over 40, like they are hopping and dancing, they're like do 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 do. Maybe not. They are not so. Yeah,
they're sitting still.
Yes, more of course in humans, as we have a big the longer lifespan, of course we are having so many things there, but still I think we could maintain that kind of playful feeling in our body, because some people can do that one, and you can really see them that they are shining and they are like bright persons, and they are like, oh, how that person can be so lively.
I love it. I think it's going to correlate with developmental reflexes that either have not been turned on or off, and that addressing those issues will become important as in humans. So before you answer this, can you tell us what developmental reflexes are, so that we're all on the same page?
Maybe the one who is commenting could say what these kind of he or she meaning primitive reflexes, or?
Okay, so can you give us a little bit more information on what you mean with developmental reflexes that have?
So primitive reflexes. Yeah.
Okay.
So we have these kind of reflexes in our body which are helping us to move. For example, in the early days, if you are doing the baby, the extension of the spine, they will do this one. Or if you are turning the head, you will get these kind of limb movements which are coming from the reflexes. They are not doing it from the like voluntary, it's coming involuntary. So for example, I would give one example from these ones. If the child is starting to learn how to ride a bicycle, and they still have this reflex on that when you rotate your head, your hands will do this one, the other will flex, and the other one will extend. So then you are having the problems to learn how to ride a bike, because when you look back, you will at the same time steer on the left or right side. So that will that can be one problem, really, that the child is not learning how to so easily how to ride a bike. Another reflex, for example, a gallant or guard reflex. Gallant is in the back, and the guard reflex is in the foot. Because now, if we are doing this for the foot, the leg will do this one or do this one. So these reflexes can be activated with specific manners. But gallant and a guard reflex can be also connected to the nocturne. So if you are not getting rid of the diapers, or you get like a lot of like you don't wake up when you should pee, so you don't get rid of the diapers because you have this kind of nocturne. So all of those can be related to this kind of reflexes. So so we need, and in normal life they are integrating well, and we learn how to ride a bike easily, no problems, or we get rid of the diapers, no problem. So when there is some kind of problems in the development of the child, it might be the signal that these kind of reflexes hasn't been integrated well. These are only a couple of examples, and of course now we are talking more about the pandiculation and not reflexes, but these couple examples of this one.
Yeah, and I mean, a very important component of that learning and development and switching off of those reflexes, if I understand right, is related to movement.
Yes.
And yeah, so from that perspective, I mean, movement is so important in the growing brain and body. That's not really different for horses or dogs or anything else, because we have a similar nervous system, similar structure. Movement is essential.
Yeah, indeed, movement is essential. That is a good sentence for this one.
A good sentence. Okay, so carrying on from that exact thought, how are we doing this and incorporating this and movement? Exercise, things like yoga in people, when we're doing them first thing in the morning or in the evening, and kind of integrating it with that circadian rhythm. If I understand this right, and please direct me, but that's a good way for us to say, okay, well, I'm stretching out my whole body and kind of clearing out that nervous system and making sure that I'm primed to move and function through the day. So it's a way for us to be intentional with moving our bodies, which is what pandiculations are triggering us to do. We can just take it further into more intention and a greater movement pattern. Would that be right?
Yeah, I would say that also, because the pandiculation itself, it's like a reflex. So in a way, to help that reflex to work in our body, we could really do that kind of gentle stretching, gentle motion, like yoga, like in Pilates, like in Qigong. So there are, or Tai Chi. So there are, like, if you think the movement of the Tai Chi, there's a lot of this kind of rounding movements. So we can really think this kind of circling movements are really good for the myofascial system, and for sure it will be good also for the brain and the nervous system. But if we now talk about the fascia and the affection of there, so we are promoting that the loose connective tissue can move, and if you remember, there are fasciicides which are secreting hyaluronan when they are stretched. So we need this kind of stretching to our body to secrete more hyaluronan, and hyaluronan will be the lubrication thing what is happening in the body. So in a way, if we now think again how we can we as a humans, it's easier because we can just think that, okay, do this and this. But then again, if we think in our animal companions, I would say this kind of relaxed walking and maybe this kind of soft mobilizations and stretchings would be also very, very beneficial also to them, I would say. But relaxed walking would be also, I would say it would be the best for all of us, like humans, dogs, and horses.
I'm so glad you mentioned that, because that is where I was going with this question, is if that helps us, what do we do for our dogs and horses? Okay, so I like that relaxed walking, and the goal would be to move the body through a full range of motion, right? So to be able to move everything through a full range of motion, which isn't happening if we're just walking. Do we want to add some extra things into just walking? Should we include some poles, or if we're thinking horses, some poles on the ground, or some dynamic mobilization exercises, things like that, and similar for dogs?
Yes, all of those would be good. And also baited stretches we could add on that list. Then when we are riding, we could also think this kind of slow motion exercise. So really this kind of thoughtful process that where the horse should move the leg and do it very slowly and thinking at the same time what is happening. And now if we think about the horses again, small herds, friends in the paddock, ability to scratch with somebody, ability to move, of course, the safe environment, this kind of regular timetable that the nervous system can be relaxed. So all of these kind of things which are supporting the healthy life, I would think would support also the myofascial well-being. So in a way, basic things, but still quite often they are not happening in our animals' life because they can be in a very small paddock without any friend or ability to scratch with somebody, and maybe the rider is a little bit frightened to do poles or going to the forest or do some hacking. So there are a lot of things that we can really improve also, and this kind of a healthy life thing.
I like the track systems that a lot of people are using for horses, especially when they are over varied terrain for exactly that reason, right? You're encouraging more movements over varied terrain, and the horse is doing it at their own pace and in their own steam. And so it's not like a labor-intensive thing for a human to go and do, but it's integrated into their daily life. So I quite like that. But the same thing applies to dogs, because they're in apartments. Dogs love to be just sleeping at our feet all day. They will be just as sedentary as we are. So.
Indeed. And if we think the clinical relevance of pandiculation, again, I think it's a sign that the body can be resetted. So the person or the animal itself is trying to reset and trying to get the neuro myofascial hygiene to work. But if we think again from the human side, we can see that chronic pain or this kind of poor interoception is linked with this kind of poor body awareness, and also linked with mental problems. So they are linking really closely. So there's a lot of things we can really help to get the body awareness back, get the interoception better, and help the mental well-being also.
Okay. Tuulia, what is the one thing you want people to remember from this conversation? What do they need to take away today?
Well, many things, of course, but if I need to say one, I would say that natural movement will be the thing that will help to maintain the myofascial health, and this kind of relaxed movement will promote also this kind of good health for the system. And I think adding to that one, this kind of feeling of body, how the body is doing, body awareness, interoception, that would be the things. And then maybe also to look how the horse or the dog is using the body when we are not affecting to them. Are they yawning? Are they stretching? How the movement patterns are if we are not pushing something to them.
I love that. Perfect. Tuulia, thank you so much for joining us today, and thank you to everyone who's been with us.
And see you again. Okay.
If you enjoyed this podcast, please hit the subscribe button so you get notified every time I load a new podcast. I'm here every week talking to vet rehab therapists from all over the world about all things vet rehab. A big thanks to our sponsor, Response System. Their sponsorship allows us to be able to give this podcast out to you for free. So go and check them out. You can go to responsesystem.com. Don't forget to bookmark the next Vet Rehab Summit on Friday the 10th and Saturday the 11th of November. Come and be a part of the world's largest online veterinary rehabilitation conference created specifically for you, the vet rehabber community. Online Pet Health members get VIP complimentary access to the Vet Rehab Summit. For more information about continuing education for vet rehabbers, you can go to onlinepethealth.com.